And welcome on this Thursday afternoon here in Europe and probably the morning if you're in the United States or Canada. We're excited you're here. We're just going to let people join in. We had some good registration numbers for this exciting webinar where we're going to be answering questions all about spectrum and dynamic LEDs. I'll introduce myself and our guest speaker today in a moment here, but first just get comfortable. And one of the things that we really like for those that join is, Anika will be in the chat from our team here, is tell us where you're calling in from. You know, we have a global audience, and this is obviously a topic that people are interested in around the world. So it's always great to hear. You can say where you're from, and you can say where you're calling in, what you're interested in, etc. Okay, great. And I am Henry Gordon Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of AGRITECTURE. And we really appreciate you joining us for another one of our webinars. We're grateful to all of you who follow our content through our blog and our social media. And just as some background, we are not just a content platform where we love to share this really exciting technology and news from around the world for the sector, but we're also consultants. So we advise on various urban and controlled environment agriculture and climate smart agriculture projects all around the world. And that's a real privilege. We've been doing that since 2014, which has been really, really exciting. So I'm calling in today from the Czech Republic, where I am visiting my family and our family farm. So it's a nice little retreat from the city in New York where I normally am. And again, welcome to all those that have logged in and joining here now. We're going to start the webinar in a moment. But I first want to introduce Abhay Thosar, who's the Chief Horticulture Specialist at Sollum Technologies. How are you doing, Abhay?
I'm doing great, Henry. Thank you.
It's nice to see you again. We've done this a couple times in different ways, and we've done some videos in person, but it's always great to see you and meet with you. And we're doing this format again of where we can ask you anything, essentially. And that's going to be really exciting. But before we get into that, can you give us a bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do at Sollum?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I work as the Chief Horticulture Specialist with Sollum Technologies. But prior to that, I'm a plant physiologist to begin with. And then, of course, a commercial grower, worked in the greenhouses for almost 12 years. So that's where my heart is. And then for the last 13 years, I've been working with horticulture LED applications. And what that means is being a physiologist, being a grower, I'm working closely with other growers on the LED applications, whereby it's not only about the lighting, but I also take into consideration all the other factors that would have an impact on the plant response under the LED lighting. And now, especially when we get into an era where we are talking about advanced four-channel dynamic lighting, and each wavelength, it contributes a lot more to the plant response, the plant biology, the plant physiology. So I think all the other factors even play a very important role in how the plant responds. So yeah, that's really exciting for me. And as you rightly said, we have done this before, but every time I talk to you, it feels like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
So,
it's a little fresh, and I'm excited because we got so many great questions. So for those of you who registered, obviously you registered, but for those of you who submitted questions in advance, thank you. We're prioritizing those questions. But just as a reminder, you can ask us questions live as well. You can put those, I believe, in the chat, or we have a Q&A feature as well, which you should be able to see. Any issues along the way, just feel free to ask Nico. But again, just one of the things I love about working with Abhay is that he's got the experience of being a grower and the knowledge on the science side for the technology of these dynamic lights from Sollum Technologies as well. But these questions today are actually not just about the lights, they're about all of the things related to spectrum, which I think again shows the commitment from this company and why we like to work with them to share knowledge openly with the industry. So without further ado, we're going to go into a rapid series of questions that we've received. We're going to try and answer as many of them as possible. And let's get started. You ready, Abhay?
absolutely. Let's do it, Henry.
Okay. So question one, what are the essential parameters when you're thinking about purchasing LED lights for growing a wide range of species? So it sounds like this question, and again, sometimes we have to interpret these questions, is about a grower that's going to have a wider variety of cultivars in their facility. So we can imagine what that's like. What do they need to be thinking of, and what are the essential parameters for the lighting in that case?
Yeah, so It's a very great question and a very good one, I would say. So before you purchase any of the LED lighting, the essential parameters that the growers need to, or the owners also need to look into
Mhm.
is first identify what are your lighting requirements. Please do not copy any of the lighting requirements what Europe is using or what North America is using or what Western US is using. Please don't copy any of those light levels or PPFD or micromoles for the crops, but identify your own. And the reason I say that because each greenhouse is different. Each greenhouse has its own challenges, its own constraints, its own strengths. And looking to your own greenhouse infrastructure, and that includes everything, your temperature, humidity, CO2, managing the irrigation, fertilizer, air movement, all of that, even includes the curtains, the ventilation, the
Mhm.
fans. Take that into consideration. Take into consideration the transmission of light, the natural light that you get in the winter months. Determine the DLI or the daily light integral for your crop, and that's your starting point. That's number one. Number two is don't always go for the cheapest option because think about as the question says growing a wide range of species. So if you are going to grow say tomatoes today and in 2 years time you might change to lettuce or strawberries, guess what? If you have a fixture, as you see on my screen, if that's going to hang there for the next at least 12 to 15 years, because most of the LEDs and all the companies now have a very, the longevity of the LEDs is pretty good. So it's going to sit there for the next at least 12 to 15 years if you are using around 2,500 or 3,000 hours per year, which is pretty normal or average for most of the growers. So before doing your purchasing, make sure that you have a fixture that is flexible, that you can change the spectrum, you can adjust the light intensity based on the crop you're growing. So that's the number two. Number three is always look for the after sales service that is being provided because that is very, very important. Being a grower myself, I don't want to buy something and figure it out, you know, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to change the spectrum? How is it going to impact the crop? And also, if something breaks down, whom am I going to call and how fast are they going to respond? So that brings me to the fourth point is buy your LEDs or try to purchase something that is local. So if it's North American made, you know that company's representative is going to reach out to you in person in 24 hours. That is very important because as a grower, even 2 days of downtime with my lights is huge. And I know a lot of the growers on the call will acknowledge that because 2 to 3 days without lights not acceptable to me as a grower. So I really want to have someone local within the country to be able to assist me immediately. And the last thing is when you're comparing the pricing, make sure that you have a standard parameter to compare, which would be dollars or cents per micromole. So I think that's how it will break down, and you will be able to have a good comparison in terms of efficacy, in terms of what the LEDs can bring to the table.
Yeah, excellent sharing of knowledge as well there on the steps that you would take to determine what kind of LEDs you get. I mean, I think just to add on a little bit to that, I think the geographic context matters so much, right? If you've got a long 3-month winter where you're going to need a lot more light versus an area where you're using the lights just to sort of stimulate some growth in the plants, that's going to really matter. And I think you mentioned it as well a little bit, but the integration of the lights into the total system is going to be important, right? You want to find a lighting provider that can connect that to the HVAC, the other systems, since they all end up relating together for sort of the ideal production. Okay, let me go ahead here to number two. So this is basically a general question about research papers and academic papers, followed up by a secondary question about anything in hostile environments. And I guess, that could be very, very cold environments or very, very hot climates. We don't know which one they were asking about. But I guess, do you have any of your sort of favorite research papers that people could think about or research direction related to LEDs?
I don't have any of my favorites because I'm a researcher myself, so
Those are
I
yours.
like to
Just
I like to
look
take a
for
look.
Abhay Thosar on Google Google Scholar, right?
So I take a look at a lot of different research papers that are being done, and I like to go behind the science. So to answer the question, are there research papers? Absolutely. Research on LEDs and the impact of wavelengths, like different wavelengths, whether it is the UV, the blue, green, red, far red, even beyond that, infrared. What is the impact on the plant? That is not new. It has been studied, like 50, 60 years back. All that research has been done. It is still being done now. The only thing is, you need to find those research papers and do not just take that research and try to apply it directly in the greenhouse. Use it as a science.
Mm.
Understand what's going on with that particular research and how you can take that concept and apply it to your facility or to your crop with the existing lighting fixture that you have. And that's exactly how I use the other research as well. I use it as a guidance, as a knowledge that I can use to now take that and further improve it into a practical application. So,
I think in some ways similar to the first question, right? It's like you want to create a
yeah,
profile of your current context, right? So whether it's a hostile environment or not, where are you? What are the geographical conditions? What's the context of the suppliers there? What's the context of the market and the crops? You want to look at all of that and maybe the realities of your farm if you already have one or what you're considering for your new one. And then you want to find some of the science to match that, right? Because that's what you're saying is like pull from the academic data, take the science out that matches your
yep,
operations. It sounds like that's what you're saying, Habe, right?
absolutely. Yeah. So if say, for example, if like there's research that says that with the blue light, the
Hmm.
stomates open, your stomatal conductance increases. Great. I take that knowledge, that science, and I'm looking at, okay, how am I going to apply in different crops? Because that application is different in tomatoes, it's much different in strawberries, and it is way different in lettuce, you know. So how am I going to apply it, and when am I going to apply it, in what stage of the crop? All of that plays a very, very important role. So yeah, there is research. To answer short, there is research. Please look at it at Google, and you will find a lot of different research papers.
Yeah, and there's actually some on your site as well that we've seen through some
Yep,
of the research partnerships you've done. So there's really some great case studies with dynamic lighting in particular. So, I think it'd be good just to give a basic introduction to dynamic lighting here because we haven't really done that yet, Abhay, and this is the first question focused on that. This question is, how can dynamic LED spectrum tuning be optimized to maximize photosynthetic efficiency while minimizing total energy? And just a couple things that were mentioned before as well to hint at for the later part of this webinar. We're asking these questions, but we do actually have an element related to the DLI point that was made earlier by Abhay. And we also are going to talk about energy efficiency based on some recent news from Sollum later on. But first, we're going to get through these questions. So this is about performance of the plant and energy savings. What's the basics of this for dynamic lighting and how it results in these savings?
absolutely. So if we go to the plant physiology 101, we know that the blue wavelength and the red wavelength are predominantly more active in the photosynthetic activity of the plants. At the same time, if we look at the photosynthetic or the efficiency of the wavelength in terms of when it gets translated to a fixture, the blue is the efficiency of the blue wavelength is less compared to the red wavelength. So what I mean by that is if you have a red wavelength or 100% red light, that's going to be way more electrically efficient compared to a blue light. So now, when we talk about the dynamic LED spectrum, that's why it is important that we talk about the four channels whereby we can control each wavelength separately, whether it is blue, green, red, or far red. And how it impacts the photosynthetic efficiency is if you have enough sunlight, and that's exactly where the dynamic lighting comes into play. When you have enough sunlight, and when I mean by enough, if you have 300 micromoles of sunlight at your plant canopy, we all know that out of that 200, let's say 200 micromoles, your blue, green, red, far red is probably going to be equally distributed around 20 to 25%. right? So if you have that many micromoles of blue, green, and far red coming from your natural light, that is probably sufficient for your plant for the photosynthetic activity. Now, when you have the dynamic LED lighting, you can switch to 100% red and boost that photosynthetic efficiency. And what that will also do is that will minimize your energy consumption.
Mm.
Because, say, for example, the full spectrum of LEDs might be at 3.3 or 3.5 micromoles per joule or micromoles per watt efficacy. If you turn it to 100% red, you're probably looking at 4.1, 4.2 micromoles per watt. So you are automatically reducing your energy consumption by anywhere between 20 to 40%. At
Yeah,
the
it's that
same time,
precision,
not
right?
compromising the plant photosynthetic efficiency.
Well, yeah, you might even be optimizing it, right? Because you're picking
Yep.
exactly what it needs and not giving it what it doesn't need, and thereby you're saving energy. So that's it. That's the beauty of the dynamic lighting. We got some questions that relate to this a little bit. I'm going to stay with. You can't see them necessarily up, hey, so I'm just going to try and read them so it's
Okay.
easier for you. But how many channels do you have with variable spectral luminaires? That's four, right? Is that the answer to that question? That's Bruno's follow-up
Well,
question.
actually, we also have more. We have 7 channels, we have 9 channels, but it is more for the research. When I'm talking about the commercial application, I think the 4 channel is what pretty much is a commercially viable option.
The most typical one. Okay, gotcha. And Bruno had a follow-up question about can they totally be controlled by a greenhouse computer control system? So not just on and off, but actually controlling them and dimming them. And this is a great question because I've seen some of this in action. So maybe it's a chance to talk about Sun as a service and the computing behind it and what you can do as far as control. Because it's not on and off. It's not like that at all. It's actually dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. So the way it works is, and we have implemented this in a few of our customers already, is whether you have Argus, Priva, Hugendon, it can easily integrate with any of our existing climate computers. And what that means is our Sun as a service software will be running in the background, whereby you can control everything through your existing climate computer. With the Sun as a service, it's not just dimming, but you can put in a lot of different thresholds. That would be a dynamic dimming, that would even be a spectral dimming, whereby you can change the spectrum going to a higher red percentage automatically based on your natural light levels from the sunlight. You can also go deeper into, most of the people might have read the article on Horti Daily, is now with the energy consumption. So you can also put in that threshold in there.
Mm.
You can put in the PPFD floor that you cannot, your lights won't dim less than say 100 micromole. Lot of different things that we can put in there. And once you put all that in there, um, you integrate with your existing climate computer. You don't need to go back in the Sun as a service unless you want to change it. Obviously, when you change the crop, you change those settings. But once it is done, you can still take care with your existing climate computer. So yes, it is
Okay.
very much doable with your existing climate computer.
Okay, let's keep going. We have a lot of questions here. So this one's about ornamental cultivation and propagation. So an ornamental cultivation for propagation by seed and by cuttings, is dynamic lighting more effective than a fixed spectrum? Is there a difference that happens in that kind of use?
Absolutely, it is. And the reason I can say that absolutely because I have worked with the fixed spectrum back in my days in 2013, 2014, when the 4 channel dynamic was not an option. It was a fixed spectrum, obviously. And I have seen some good results with the fixed spectrum, I won't lie. But now with the dynamic lighting, I'm seeing even better results because the reason for that is now I can have a much better control on what wavelength I want to have at a particular stage of the crop. So, say for example, it is unrooted cutting or from the seed. For the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I might go with a certain lighting strategy. The next 4 weeks I might go with a different lighting strategy, and then when I'm finishing the crop or even after transplant, I would go with a different lighting strategy. So that's the benefit of having a dynamic 4 channel LED lighting rather than a fixed spectrum where I would be able to control only the PPFD just by dimming it, but I won't have any control on the ratios of the red, blue, green, and far red.
Fantastic. And what is the next in the development pipeline for dynamic LEDs? And I don't know what you can reveal here about what you think is happening, but this is some ideas here: integration controls with crop registration and fruit development. I mean, this is sort of a bit your language, but like, what is the possibility of how far this could go? I think is the question.
Yep, absolutely. So dynamic lighting, as we know, it has a great impact on how the plant responds. And along with that, as I mentioned right in the beginning, there are, 8 other factors that have even a larger, impact on the crop along with the lighting. What we learned in high school, like CO2 plus H2O in presence of light gives us the sugars plus energy. So when we are talking CO2 plus H2O, that is not just CO2 plus H2O anymore in the greenhouse. It is CO2, its temperature, its humidity, its air movement. It's not just H2O, but it's the fertilizer, what kind of media you are using. So take all that into account, and then in presence of a certain light condition, how is it going to have an impact? So this is where the integration is going to come up. Like going forward, it's not just going to be the light, automatic dimming based on the forecasted DLI. All of that is good, but in future it's going to be how are we going to integrate the temperature, the air movement, the CO2, the vents closing and opening, the curtains. All of that is going to come into play, and I think that's where I'm really getting excited with what's coming up in future.
Yeah, just even more precision, really
Yep.
reacting and getting these sort of incremental gains on all these efficiencies across the greenhouse. I think we've been hearing more about that as the future of this sector. And like you said, integrating all the solutions, all the equipment together. So now getting back into some of the basics, what are some of the target micromoles for each crops? I mean, this kind of stuff people can look up online as well, but I guess they want your opinion, Abhay.
Well, and that's exactly what I don't want them to do because,
Yeah.
like I get this question, oh, how many micromoles should I target for my tomato? And I'm like, what kind of a question is that? I would rather ask, how many moles per day should I target for my tomato? And I
Uh-huh.
would say, yeah, you can target 25 moles per day. Now, if you are based in the Netherlands, guess what? In winter, you are getting only 1 to 3 moles of natural light. So
Mm.
your supplemental lighting levels would be like 350 or 400 micromoles. But if you are in Leamington, Ontario, in Canada, or even northeast of the US, guess what? You're getting 6 to 8 moles of natural light even during the winter months. So now you can easily get to that 25 moles per day, even with 300 micromoles. You don't need to target 400. So why do you want to invest more in the lights? Well, I'll be happy to sell them. My company would make money, but at the same time, being a grower, you don't need it because you are in Ontario. So don't try to copy what the Dutch growers are doing with 400 micromoles on tomatoes. You can get the same results or better even with 300 micromoles. So I think that's what the growers should try to ask the right question, not the target micromoles, but they need to understand what is the DLI in terms of moles per day, and then look at your own geographic location, your transmission. Again, as I mentioned initially, look at your own limitations of the greenhouse, and then come to the PPFD or micromole number that you can ask your lighting provider.
Yeah, I think those first steps you listed in the first question are gold for planning. And yeah, it's what is the DLI in your market? We'll talk about that later. What does your plant need? What are you going to supplement? And then making sure that connects with all the systems you've got going on. Um, why is there a need for people to buy dynamic lighting versus static lighting?
Well, a lot of different reasons, and nowadays even more. Number one would be geopolitical. We know what's going on in North America, in Europe, between the different continents. Things are changing. It's not
Mhm.
like the good old days where if I'm growing tomatoes, I'll be growing it for the next 10 years. I'm all set. Things change. That's
Yeah.
number one. Number two is the market demand. The market demand is changing very fast because with the Gen Zs, the Gen X, Y, Zs, whatever you can call them, the demand for new product, the new produce is really increasing. And when that happens, you need to shift, you need to pivot. You cannot just stay what you are growing. The third thing is, as I mentioned, those lights are going to stay there for almost 12, 15 years and even more, depending on the usage. So you definitely want to have something that is adapting to the crop and not the other way around. You don't want the crop to adapt to the lighting, but you want the lighting to be adaptable to the crop requirements, right? So these are the things that need to be taken, and that's why there is a need. And then the last one is, yeah, if you would have asked me this question 6, 7 years back, the commercial viability of a 4-channel dynamic fixture was not there. You know,
Yeah, it's changed.
expensive. It didn't make the ROI. Things have changed. Now the ROI is much comparable to your static LED lighting. So if you're getting all those benefits as I listed before, along with the pricing, it's a no-brainer that you need to go with the dynamic lighting.
Yeah, making more and more sense. So adjusting the spectrum for the fixture is intimidating for growers, right? So some growers, we just even talked about this a little bit at the beginning, like they don't even know
Yeah,
what micromoles or even understand the DLI in some cases. So it can be overwhelming. So, how do you help growers navigate that? Such a sophisticated technology, a lot of options. How do you work with growers on that?
absolutely, absolutely. So number one is Sollum has a very good, support in place, and our support system is 24/7 that the growers can call in and they can ask any questions that they want. That's number one. Number two, and that's probably the number one, is we do quite a lot of knowledge sharing with the growers. And what I mean by that is we conducted training sessions with the growers. If they buy our fixtures, if they buy our software, it's not just, yeah, you buy it, figure it out yourself. It's a lot more hand holding, I would say training on site for their particular crops. And it is done extensively until they get comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And the most important thing about our software is it's a very user friendly software. So I'm a plant physiologist. I don't know anything about coding. I don't know anything about software development. Uh, However, I can easily change the things in the software just with the click of a mouse. And that's how user friendly it is. So having done being a grower myself, I give that feedback to our tech team that, hey, make sure that it's easy for me as a grower to use it, you know. So that's the reason, like, instead of getting intimidated by the software, how am I going to use the different wavelengths for the plant growth? Reach out to us. We will train you. We will guide you on doing that along with our software.
Yeah, I think I've been to the office a couple times, seeing the software demonstrated and seeing it in action, and also hearing about the 20 plus agronomists that can support in addition to that. That's how you get there. You're not
Yep.
left alone sort of with the lights. There's a lot of service
No.
supporting
And
around
then we
that.
bring all the information, all the trials that we do. We are open to share that information with our customers.
I mean, this question is pretty basic. I don't want to like give questions that are just like why Sollum is so amazing. I mean, we just talked about it, why Sollum is differentiated from this. And again, we're just sharing the questions that were asked with the registration. So we might skip through this one, but I think the differentiation is really through leading, pioneering dynamic lighting, the sun as a service, and something we're going to be talking about at the end here. If you didn't see the Horta Daily article about energy, so stay tuned for that part at the end, which is something new that Sollum is doing that we're bringing into today's webinar.
Well, one thing I just quickly wanted to add,
Sure.
along with the fixture and the software, how easy it is to use and the support that we offer to the growers. Most important is we are a North American company
Hmm.
based in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada, and we have the manufacturing in Montreal as well as in the US. So it is a true North American company whereby we can provide the after sales support within 24 hours in North America.
Yeah, that is a differentiation from some of the other providers in this market that's growing a lot. And we do have an international audience, but a lot in North America. So we did a webinar actually on leafy greens. If people want to look on YouTube as well with Abhay, we talked specifically about that. But this question here, as you can see, is about the economically, yes, yet So I think we have to go back to the methodology a little bit further, Abhay, because everybody wants the short answer, but there's a little bit of the method. Help us with that.
Well, there is because there's no like it would have been easy for me to say, oh yeah, the most economical, yeah, go with 85% red, 7% blue, 8% green, no far red.
Mm,
No, no, I'm sorry. I wish I could have given that answer, but a lot depends on what type of baby leaf you are growing, what is your planting density, what is your like whether you're growing in a deep water culture, shallow water, moving gutters, what kind of environment you are growing. So there are a lot of different things that we can take into account. One thing that I can absolutely tell is when I have compared the dynamic LED lighting with the static LED lighting side by side in North America, of course, not in Europe, but in North America, I have seen the benefit of the lighting strategies that we put in place with the dynamic lighting, and we were able to get anywhere between 10 to 20% increase in production
mm.
by putting extra 1 to 2 leaves because of the lighting strategies that we were able to do it with the dynamic lighting and not with the static LED lighting. So that's something that I can definitely share.
That's a good note. And we do send a follow-up email after this. So we'll try to include that in some of the resources that we share there. And as Abhay mentioned, Sollum is very open. You can contact them and ask questions or go via AGRITECTURE and we'll make that possible. And we have the contact information at the end as well. I just want to stay here a little bit because we got a live question here from Khalid Hawis, who says, are micromole levels above 700 harmful to lettuce? Is the DLI still counted when light intensity exists 700 micromoles? I don't understand the last part of that question, but anything about sort of limits related to that crop?
Sure. So is it Khalid who asked the
Yeah,
question? Okay, so
yes.
Khalid, you can look up the research paper from Bruce Bugby on lettuce. He's from Utah State University in North America. And he has done a trial, a research paper. He has published a research paper. And the reason I like it is he has grown lettuce without any tip burn or leaf burn at 500 micromoles under high pressure sodium. So you can imagine how much was the heat that was generated at 500 micromoles. But the reason I like the paper is he has clearly mentioned in the paper that along with the 500 micromoles and the heat from the lamps, he made sure that he adjusted the CO2, he adjusted the airflow accordingly, and the irrigation and fertigation accordingly. So the reason I like this paper, and to answer your question, yes, you can grow it at 700 micromoles, but it is almost like if I'm driving a Toyota or Honda, or now if I'm driving a race, like a Formula One. And at that time, my each RPM and all those other dashboards, I'm not a car racer, so I don't know, but I have to make sure that everything is on point. Because
Yeah,
if I fail in one thing, it's going to be a disaster.
it's
So
all connected,
exactly.
right?
And that's why short answer, yes, you can grow with 700 micromoles. Be careful. That's definitely something that I would like to add.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that you keep putting across, which is so valuable for people to remember, right? It's about your context. You can look at the science, you can look at the academic papers like that from Bruce Bugby, and I put that in the chat there, the name, so people can find it. But in the end, you're gonna have to apply it to your specific context, your conditions. How do you pull that out there? But I want to talk a bit about something that this. I've got a couple more questions that have come in live, so I want to give a chance for them,
Yeah.
Abhay, before we go to the next section, because we got through some 10 of the previously submitted ones. But this one is from Larry. It's kind of interesting one, and we sort of heard it on a couple other webinars, but I'm curious to get your take on it again. A lot of these are intended or they are happening in greenhouses like you see behind you, right? A sort of glass, high-tech greenhouse. But we know that greenhouses have a range of technology. So this one's asking for basically related to other structures that are lower tech, right? High tunnels or semi-protected structures. So you're going to have different variables. You're going to have vents opening. You're going to have less control overall. Do you see a future? Is there ever a time where, supplemental lighting or LED lighting becomes more possible in these lower tech ones? Or is it not really sensible because you don't have the other control over HVAC and those other factors? In some cases, you don't even have control over like they're not hydroponic. Sometimes they're even in the soil, right? So in many cases, what do you think about that?
Yep. Yep. No, absolutely. So you almost answered half of partial question that, yeah, you
I
don't
know a
have
little bit.
control. Yeah, exactly. You don't have control. You are just trying to manage at that point,
Yeah.
the environmental conditions. So if you're just managing the environmental conditions, but again, if you are able to push additional production, say, for example, or improve the quality using the lights, and I don't mean to say, and that's why the advanced four-channel LED comes into play. To give an example, if you're, in not in a high-tech greenhouse, but in a low-tech greenhouse where you're not able to control the different parameters, but managing it, maybe you
Hmm.
are going to run just the blue light in the morning, or
Right.
even the red light in the middle of the night, and that is going to have a bigger impact on the crop. And the advantage of doing that is if you're running just the blue light, guess what, you're not running the whole 1,000 watt for the fixture. It's going to consume only 150 or 200 watts depending on how much intensity you want. But what I mean by that is you're going to save with a lower energy consumption. You're still going to see the benefits even in low tech greenhouses. So yes, there is a case for it, but it needs to be evaluated on each case to case basis.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how this evolves because there are so many of these lower tech greenhouses. Many of them are under pressure. They need to adopt new technologies, but they're not necessarily going to completely retrofit into high tech. So it is interesting. I mean, I've seen some that even have CO2 emitters in them, right? And it's like that's exposed to the environment. But the sort of the lines are starting to blur a little bit between low tech and mid tech and high tech, which I find interesting. And in your case study, yeah, if it made sense economically with the product you're selling and the quality of it, you could have a dynamic Sollum light there producing the light you need that's low energy, but you still have that CapEx, right? That has to make sense in the end.
Yep.
Let's go to more control now. We got two questions that I want to tackle together because they sort of relate to those projects where people want more control. We've got Mex Helwig here asking about UVA and UVB wavelengths for stress elicitation. Does this hold any potential for increasing compounds in medicinal plants? So we can talk a bit about the medicinal plants work that Sollum has done. But that's really about, what can these lights do? We already know lights can elicit reactions in plants, but I think a little bit more from you on that. And then from Larry, a sort of related question, which I think we can do it in one, is can dynamic spectrum help manage plant morphology, root development, flowering behavior, or crop uniformity? And they're interested in berry crops. So one is interested mostly in medicinal plants and the other is more in berry crops, but it's all about, again, control both on the exterior, the flowering, the fruiting, the structure, but also the inside. So what can we do? I mean, I remember personally just actually visiting a medicinal plants facility that was using Sollum lights, and the grower themselves, we have a video about it on our YouTube and on our Instagram as well, um, said that they were able to, it goes back to the competitive environment, right? They have these products they're making from these medicinal plants, and it's a competitive environment. And because of the Solemn lights and the dynamic lighting and the recipes, they're able to create their own sort of unique uh, profiles of whether it's THD or CBD or whatever it is in the plant that the grower is interested in, that they can then create a branded sort of ingredient in the medicinal plant for the market. But tell us what you think, Abhay.
Yep. No, absolutely. So just to begin with I'll first tackle the UV part because most often I'm not aware of any of the commercial LED lighting that has a UV component in it, especially for the top lighting for the greenhouses. They don't have the UVA or UVB. It usually starts um, with the B, like the blue wavelength from 400 nanometers onwards, and goes up to far red. So we don't have the UV component, and that is more for the human safety, because if the lights, as you see in the picture behind me, if they're hanging there and if someone turns the UV on, guess what? If I'm working underneath it, it's not safe for me. And that's the reason we don't include the UV component in any of those commercial lighting. That being said, there are fixtures available specifically only for the UV, and we have seen a lot of those robots that people are using, in cucumber, tomatoes, even in strawberries, to to act as pesticide or fungicide to take care of that. So that is already being done. Now the impact on the crop, absolutely, there is an impact on the crop because of these shorter wavelengths. They have a certain
Mm.
response within the plants, and as a result, you see the benefit in terms of whether it is the terpenes, the CBD, even in the medicinal plants, whether you're targeting any specific composition, like even in arugula, like you can increase the vitamin C content. You can increase it up to 600 times more under a certain spectrum that you grow. So things like that, even in say tomatoes or in and the second question was for berry crops. We have seen the bricks percentage improve in the berry crops, right? So those are the kind of plant responses that we can get when you are dealing with different wavelengths. And when I say different wavelengths is when you're targeting specific wavelengths, and that has to be done at the specific crop stage and also during the specific growth period. So there are quite a few things that go in there. And as a result, I say that it's not like just take the light, turn it on, you read somewhere, you do that spectrum, it works. No, we will work with you closely and help you figure out what is that good solution for your application and to get to your specific objectives.
Yeah, and I think again, just a reminder to everyone, like it comes down to the ROI, the return on investment as well, right? So you need to get
Yep.
that professional guidance based on what your market is going to demand and what the growth is of the product, and then the support that Abhay mentioned is real, that Sollum has and gets recognized for, that they can support you through the science and the cultivation and how the systems of the lights and your various grow systems work together. So I think the answer keeps going a bit back to that, but it also means it's a reason to sort of engage and learn about what those services could do in the context of your unique project specifically, because that's where you can get those answers more in detail. We got a couple more questions here, and then I want to get onto some of the latest news, Habe, and we'll talk about DLI a little bit more from AgriTecture's end. But Leo in the chat here put one, which was this is just a fun one to do, which is about Sollum and vertical farming. Is Sollum getting into the vertical farming game? Why or why not? When can we expect that? And and then I think his second question was, can the economics of full spectrum compete with fixed spectrum with a form factor better suited for vertical farming? I mean, that's a difficult question to answer, that second one. But maybe why or why not vertical farming? Be honest.
Well, to be honest, like right now, the focus of Solam is more on the greenhouse application. And to be fair enough, we have read a lot of news about vertical farming, what's going on. So, is it a good market? Yes, absolutely it is. Is it a market right now for Solam? Maybe not right now in 2026 or 2027, but you don't know what's going in to happen in the future. So we always keep it open. But does that technology also translate into vertical farming? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Like you can have those technology in the vertical farming, and if you have those four-channel controllability in the vertical farming, it can definitely help you excel in A, the crop production, B, the quality, and C, in managing the crop cycle time, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a bit to this, considering the large amount of work that agriculture has done and still does in vertical farming. But in 2021, there was like $2.5 billion of funding that went to vertical farming, and that dropped to about 200 million in 2022, and it's been sort of a drip ever since. So that first wave of large scale vertical farms has struggled. That doesn't mean there's not some business case for it in others, but what I see up, hey, is that some of the vertical farms are going more towards, and where they shine is really specialized products or even pharma products. And I imagine you probably can't talk about it, but you're seeing probably some of your lights being used in sort of vertical farming lab-esque contexts where the dynamic lighting with even more channels is probably being super useful to the researchers and those potential customers that are going to be doing that. So I do see obviously dynamic lighting playing a role as far as it connecting with the ultimate control that vertical farming can provide. But I, when I see Sun as a Service and I see the Solemn Lights and I see some of the projects I've been to, it's really cool because it's about complementing the sun, right? We've talked about that a couple times. What is the DLI? And in the end, the sun has a lot of free energy. It could also create certain problems in your operation, right? If you have too much of it, or if it creates heat, that's why we have shading.
Yep.
But that's what I find personally so interesting about the Solemn Lights always when I see the projects in person, especially, is that they sort of complement with the environment around it. Now, in a vertical farm, you're eliminating the sun entirely. So, will dynamic lights make sense? Yes, they're going to give you more control, but they're not sort of working with the sun in the same way that the current fixture does.
And that's exactly what the name suggests, sun as a
Yeah,
service. So you could create the same algorithm as the sun has
yeah.
inside the vertical farming, even without the sun being there. You know what I
And
mean? So
there's
you could
research on
have a
that. There's
yeah,
research
you
on
would
that,
have a
right? Like that the
sunrise with a
plants
certain
need that
wavelength.
through the day. Exactly. It's not just
Yeah,
about the spectrum, right? Which is what we're
no.
talking about today. It's about the timing, it's about the intensity. And plants go through this cycle, they even go through these seasons. So it's really interesting the sort of what I would call biomimicry that's embedded in your product as well that could have a role in vertical farming. But I think it is very difficult to get that amount of tech and control into a small fixture in the vertical farms. You have all these heat problems. Now I'm like nerding out in vertical farming, but that's I think what gets really difficult for any lighting company is because vertical farming is about saving space, and it's very difficult to get so much power, so much control in a smaller fixture where you have space in a greenhouse in contrast. Well, thank you, everyone. Those are fantastic questions. Don't go anywhere because we mentioned a little bit about this Horty Daily article, which is about energy and electricity rates. And Solum continues to innovate. So, Abhay, tell us about this. They can read more about it. We'll follow up with a link to that. But tell us more about this and what's the latest news here?
Yeah, so the reason we started working on this feature is recently what we have been hearing from a lot of the growers in the US as well as in Canada is the fluctuating electricity rates, and the rates have gone, and even in Europe, I know the rates have gone really high,
Yeah, Europe as well.
and a lot of growers that I know, they even just turned off the lights. They're like, I cannot even run the lights. I'm going to turn it off, right? So that's where, being a grower myself, our team with the tech company, we tried to see, okay, what is the solution that we can bring to the table since we already have such a fantastic product in the market. So with the fluctuating electricity rates, what we could do with our current feature that we just launched is based on the electricity rates, the growers could actually dim the lights based on the electricity rates, and they can, a lot of the growers, they know what the electricity rates are going to be for the next day. So say for example at 5 p.m. today in Ontario, I would know what my electricity rates are going to be for tomorrow, during what time of the day. So if I have a setting in my Sun as a Service, what will happen is when my electricity rates peak up to say 20 cents or 24 cents, my lights will automatically dim. And when I say dim, it's not just static dimming, it will also dim based on the spectral composition. So what it will do is it will eliminate the blue, the greens, and the far reds, which are not efficient. It will stay on with the red until a certain time. So while it is saving the energy cost for me, it is also enabling the crop with, say, for example, with a higher red percentage, that the crop is still able to continue with the photosynthetic activity. And that's what we call as the energy use efficiency model compared to the light use efficiency model. So light use efficiency is where we talk about the total moles and how the plant is able to convert those moles into grams or kilos per square meter. Now we also take into consideration the energy use efficiencies. If you go to the next slide, I think that's where it talks about the
Mm,
energy use efficiency, whereby the grower can decide that, okay, at 25 cents per kilowatt hour, does it make sense for me to run the lights for 5 hours, or should I just dim it? And when the lights are dim and when it is running to a higher red percentage, obviously instead of 1,000 watts now, probably the light is running at 400, 500 watts. So it is consuming half the power, half the energy cost, still giving the plant the required boost or oomph for the photosynthetic activity, and it has a very minimal impact on the production. So those are the kind of considerations that we take into play when we implement this feature. That it's not just, yeah, just dim the lights, but at the same time take educated, you know you have a educated guess at, if I'm going to dim the lights, I'm going to save, say for example, $10 per square meter. If I don't dim it, I still get the production, and the difference in the production is going to get me only $5 per square meter. So I think as a grower, I would rather dim the lights and save $10 per square meter and not go after the $5 per square meter production. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not a very clear example, but
No, I think it is a clear example. I mean, I hear this stuff all the time from different growers. I mean, not even on the high tech side. I remember there was one grower in Spain, and it was like this rain event happened, and they had to decide are they going to harvest first or not. But like these are the things that can happen to your operation, whether it's an energy spike or whether it's a weather event. And in the end, if you don't have the option to control or react, then you're stuck with whatever the scenario is. So this is to me a really obvious but intelligent next step for Sollum to bring in those energy adaptability models. So I just curious, like this again is also difficult for some growers to make those decisions, right? Because you're going to have to model out what is the PPFD floor, the minimum I'm going to need. I mean, they know that, but they maybe need to do that in contrast of the economics, et cetera. Do your team also work with them to develop these along the way?
yep, absolutely. And that is a part of our ongoing training that we offer with the feature, is we also train them how to use that particular feature. So with the minimum PPFD floor, along with that, like say, for example, if the lights are running from say 3 a.m. to 9 p.m., like just
Mm.
take that photo period, when are the lights going to dim. So what we can do is we can shift the photo period, we can shift the different spectrums that we could use from, say for example, from 3 to 7. If the light electricity rates are going high from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., we want to dim the lights, but then we can make use of 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Window. How best can we use that to the crop? And that's exactly where the shift will come into play, and how the growers can use the different lighting strategies along
Mm.
with the electricity pricing.
Yeah, you know what's really cool as well is like going back to some of the economic and market volatility you talked about is that sometimes there are price fluctuations in the market and this whole total system of control of the lights and obviously energy being part of the cost, but you can also slow down your production a little bit, right? You have some control about that. If
Yeah.
you're saying, oh, if I wait another week, I can get a better price for my product. And some of these are bets, some of these are risks that you have to take. But again, it's like if you don't have the option to do that kind of control, whether it's responding to energy, whether it's responding to a change in weather, whether it's responding to a change in the market, then you're stuck with whatever you've got. And that's the future of controlled environment agriculture is getting that control even more precise time and time again. And you all just continue to do it. So this is really exciting. How are
Yeah,
customers
no, the growers
reacting?
don't know the
Yeah,
future. Like, I cannot predict the future, but at least with all these
they know
tools,
there's going to be more
they can,
volatility though.
yeah,
Like
they
we
can
know
make
that
an
for sure.
informed decision for tomorrow, today.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So this is sort of what it looks like, right? Is it lives within Sun as a service, or is it a separate sort of part, separate
no,
software?
it is along with the Sun as a Service
Okay.
platform. So it's a new feature that is being added to it. So nothing changes. If you already
Mhm.
have a Sun as a Service, with the push of a button, this feature can be activated on your end as well.
Okay, so it's got a projection, it's got the past data in there, and that's helping you basically know how much you're going to spend on
Correct.
energy.
So as I mentioned before, like we would know the day before what is going to be the fluctuation in the pricing for the next day, and based on that, we also have the projected DLI, or the natural sunlight. So with those two parameters in place, with the pricing, with the natural sunlight, we can then have a strategy that we can build in, based on the crop, of course, the photo period that you're using, and based off that, we can have the different lighting strategies that includes different percentages of blue, green, whether it is the far red, it's blue only or red only, or a lot of different things that we can incorporate in there in order to make sure that there is a minimum impact on the plant production.
Fantastic, super exciting. I'm really excited to hear how growers respond to this. I mean, obviously, it came out of their need and their development, and this is a critical issue across all the markets that we've described in North America and in Europe as well. I mean, this is a big one there as well. Huge energy fluctuations.
Yep. Yep.
So we talked a bit about daily light integral. So I just wanted to take a moment because my team, Abhay at AGRITECTURE, has been working on some simple tools across our website to give people information. And so this is our free daily light integral calculator. So essentially you can put in your location, you can put in elements related to your greenhouse coverage, how much transparency there is. You can basically put in information about your greenhouse itself and what you want to do. It sort of goes below this. It's just a bit of a snapshot of that. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell you your sort of ideal DLI over time, what you're going to need throughout month by month, which is a good starting point as you speak with Sollum Technologies and work with them and consider LED lighting. It's one of these questions. So you can use the software. It'll give you the sort of output there as a preview, and then you can put in your email and you'll get a full report from that as well that'll guide you. So just something we wanted to share today since DLI came up several times.
I just wanted to add, Henry, that I have used this calculator and
Oh
it's
yeah,
fantastic. It's
great.
really good, and as I mentioned, like that should be the step one for anyone who is looking into supplemental lighting, for sure. So please go there, do your own calculations, and you would know what is the light level. So next time you won't ask either myself or anyone, oh, how many micromoles should I target for tomatoes? You will have your own answer that for my greenhouse, I need 315 micromoles to be precise.
That's it. So next time you come to our live Ask Us Anything webinars, we want you to come with a question saying, I need this DLI. This is what I'm looking for, or this is my DLI and this is what I need. So that's going to be great. Thanks so much, Abhay, for trying that. We love to get people to their next step. That's what agriculture does, right? So we give people knowledge, we give them some consulting the next step, and in the end, we recommend suppliers that they work with based on all of those conditions, the market, what you should be growing, what's going to work with your budget, your skill set. So we sort of serve as that earlier step that helps get the suppliers, ones like Sollum that we highly recommend, qualified leads that can get those greenhouses built efficiently with amazing tech. So check it out. It's linked in the chat, and you can also just Google AGRITECTURE DLI and some articles about it, and a link to it will show up. So that brings us to the end here. We want you to contact Abhay. He's super open, as you can already hear. He also publishes a lot on LinkedIn about the latest news from Sollum. And so we want to thank him again. I think this is our 6th webinar, Abhay, so we're on a good track. So great to work with you again. And reach out to Sollum. You can scan the QR code to learn more. And of course, AGRITECTURE, we're so happy you joined another one of our webinars. We would love to hear from you, what you think, what you want to hear more about from a content perspective, any questions or feedback, or talk to us about a farm that you're planning of any kind. Really, we work on a lot of them. So thanks so much, everyone. And thank you again, Abhay. And
Thank you everyone for attending the webinar. It was great.
Great questions today.
Yeah. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any specific questions.
There you go. Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you.